The wind cut through the rickety depot like a blade, rattling the windows and shaking loose dust from the roof beams. The afternoon train hissed as it pulled away from the platform, trailing steam and noise and a dozen curious eyes. Only one figure remained when it was gone, a woman. Standing still at the far end, her gloved hands clenched wide around a carpet bag. Madeline didn't flinch as the laughter faded behind her. The man who had greeted her moments ago, round-bellied, red-faced, smelling of whiskey and stale tobacco, had turned on his heel and stormed off in a fit of embarrassment, leaving only the echoes of his final remark. "You didn't say you was older." She stood there anyway, not begging, not crying, just watching the horizon where the train had vanished, her shoulders stiff and squared as though daring the whole damn world to pity her. Caleb Granger saw it all from across the street, his hand tightening around the sack of feed he'd slung over one shoulder. He hadn't meant to stop, just needed supplies and silence. Same as always, but something about the scene tugged at him. Not the drama, not the cruelty of the man's rejection. No, it was her stillness, unmoving like a tree that had weathered 1,000 storms and still refused to fall. Eli tugged at his coat. "Pa, that lady's crying." Caleb glanced down at his son. "Ain't your business, Eli. She looks lost. She's not our problem." Still, he didn't move. Neither did the woman. 10 minutes later, she was still there when the street cleared, boots crunching down to nothing but wind and wagon wheels. He watched her shoulders rise and fall with slow, deliberate breaths, like someone trying hard not to break. And damn it all, Caleb crossed the street. "You all right, ma'am?" he asked gruffly. May turned slowly, lifting her chin. Her eyes, blue and tired, met his without flinching. "Just been reminded I'm not 20 anymore. Funny thing is, I never claimed I was." Caleb didn't laugh. He respected the fire behind her words, the way she stood tall, even with dust in her hem and shame at her heels. "Need somewhere to go?" She eyed him warily. "That depends. Are you offering help or pity?" Eli peeked from behind his father's leg. "We got an extra room." "And stew." That made her smile. "Just a little." "I won't be charity," she said. Caleb nodded once. "You won't be. Just a roof and a warm meal till you figure what's next." They rode in silence, the wagon creaking beneath them, shadows stretching long across the prairie. May held her bag like it might vanish if she let go. Eli dozed in the back, head bobbing with the rhythm of the road. Caleb didn't ask questions, and May didn't offer answers. At the ranch, the sun dipped low behind the hills, casting the house in golden flame. May stared at it, wooden plain but strong, and something unreadable flickered across her face. She stepped down from the wagon without help, boots hitting dirt like a woman reclaiming solid ground. "I'll sleep in the barn if it suits you better," she said, not looking at him. "You'll sleep in a bed," Caleb replied. "My wife's old sewing room. Been empty 5 years." May said nothing but followed him inside. Later by the fire, she sat stiff in a borrowed dress, while Eli chattered about coyotes, chickens, and how's my used to make wildberry pie. May listened patiently, a small crease at the corner of her mouth. Caleb watched from the corner. She hadn't asked about his wife. He appreciated that. "You good with kids?" he asked finally. "I was the eldest of 7, she said, "and I nursed half of them through the fever. Never had my own." He nodded. She didn't need to explain more. Thunder rolled low in the distance. Caleb stood and checked the window. Storm's coming. Fast. May looked up. "Do you get many strangers out here?" "Not the good kind." Something shifted behind her eyes. "Then you should know. Someone followed me off that train." Caleb's jaw tensed. "You sure he was in the depot?" "Didn't speak. Just stared." "I saw him again as we left, standing by the water tower." "You recognize him, no?" "But I recognize the look." "What look?" "The kind that follows women who no one's gonna miss." Eli stirred on the rug. Caleb met May's gaze. He believed her. "I'll keep the rifle by the door tonight," he said. She nodded, the fire crackling between them. Outside, wind howled through the canyon. Inside, the silence grew comfortable, and somewhere far off beyond the ridge, a pair of eyes watched the house from a saddle waiting. Rain pounded the roof like bullets by dawn. Caleb stepped into the kitchen barefoot, rifle slung over one shoulder, expecting silence. Instead, the scent of frying bacon hit him first, followed by the sight of May at the stove, hair pinned up, tight sleeves rolled. She moved like she belonged there, like she had been there 1,000 mornings already. He frowned. Didn't expect you up. She didn't turn. Didn't expect to sleep in. Eli sat at the table, eyes wide as saucers. She made biscuits. Real ones. Not the burned kind. Caleb grunted. Mine aren't burned. They're charcoal with butter. May cracked an egg, smirking faintly. I figured a thank you was in order. He sat across from her, silent. He was watching not just her hands or her posture, but the way her eyes flicked to the window every few minutes, scanning the rain, the tree line. She hadn't forgotten the man by the water tower. Neither had he. You sleep all right? He asked. Well enough. I kept a knife under my pillow. Caleb nodded, like that was normal. Out here it was. She served them both without asking. The food was simple, honest. She ate last in small bites like someone who'd learned to stretch meals across hard years. Eli cleared his plate and disappeared outside to check the barn, leaving the two of them alone. Where'd you learn to cook like that? Caleb asked. May sipped her coffee before answering. I worked in field kitchens during the war. Blue coats, gray coats. Didn't matter much by the end. Blood looks the same on any man. Caleb blinked. He hadn't expected that. You were a nurse for a while, then a cook, then a gravedigger. She said it with no bitterness, just fact. He respected that more than any sob story. What happened to your family? He asked, quieter. May set her mug down. Typhus, then cholera. I buried them all before I turned 25. The room went still. He looked away, jaw tight. You're not what I expected. Most men say that, right before they decide I don't belong anywhere. He didn't answer. Outside, Eli's voice echoed from the barn, cheerful and oblivious. Caleb rubbed a callous hand over his beard. Uneasy. She stood and took the dishes to the basin. If you'd rather I moved on once the storm clears. Say so. I don't mind honest talk. He stared at her for a long beat. I don't want you gone. She turned slow. Even if I ain't young or gentle or likely to make you more sons. Caleb rose, clearing his throat. You're useful. And Eli, he took to you. That all I am to you, useful. He didn't know how to answer that, so he left. The storm passed by mid-morning, leaving puddles in the scent of wet sagebrush. May took a broom to the porch while Caleb repaired a loose shutter. They worked in tandem, wordless, efficient. Eli played in the mud and came back looking like he'd rolled through the entire pasture. That night, Caleb found me by the barn staring out at the far hills. A rifle leaned against a wall near her. Expecting someone, he asked. She didn't move. Something doesn't sit right. That man from the depot, he wasn't just watching, he was waiting. Like he knew me. You're sure you never saw him before? No. But I've made enemies. Some men don't forget when a woman says no. He stepped beside her, scanning the tree line. Dusk was thickening. Shadows pooled in every crevice. We can ride to town tomorrow, he said. Ask questions? She shook her head. No. I'd rather know what's coming than turn my back to it. A moment passed. The wind rustled through the dry grass like whispering voices. You still got that knife under your pillow? Switched it for the shotgun under bed. Caleb huffed. Smart. They stood there a while saying nothing, not needing to. Later, after Eli was tucked into bed with his usual string of impossible questions. Do cows ever dream? Would a coyote befriend the dog? Caleb found May cleaning his dead wife's old sewing machine. Her hands were methodical, respectful. She didn't ask permission. She was a good woman, he said. Maiden stopped polishing. I can tell. She was sick a long time. That's why Eli barely remembers her. Maiden nodded once. You ever grieve long enough to stop hurting? No. Just gets quieter. He watched her fingers trace the carved initials on the wooden casing. I'm not looking to replace her, he said. I'm not trying to be her. Their eyes met for a moment. Something unspoken passed between them. An understanding, perhaps, or the early roots of trust. Outside, a coyote howled. Caleb moved a window, instinctively scanning the yard. May stayed seated, her back straight. It's not the coyotes I'm worried about, she murmured. He turned sharply. What do you mean? She hesitated. Then quietly, there was a name written inside my train ticket envelope. Not the man I was to marry. A different name. Scribbled, not typed. Rake. Mean anything to you? The room dropped 10 degrees. Caleb's voice came low. Tommy Rake, that's the name. He sat slowly, eyes distant. He used to run guns across the border. Mean as hell. Beat his wife half to death. She ran. He hunted her for years. Last I heard he was in with the railroad thugs, scaring folks off land they want for track. May's face turned to stone. You think he bought my ticket? I think he bought something. The front door creaked. Just a whisper of motion. Caleb grabbed a rifle. May was already moving silent as a ghost toward the back stairs. They waited, but nothing came, just wind, and the sound of footsteps receding through mud. Caleb eased the door open, saw nothing, only a muddy boot print in the porch light, and a torn scrap of paper nailed to the door with a pocket knife. One word scrawled in black ink. Mine. Caleb found the barn door swung half open by morning, one hinge cracked and dangling like a broken limb. He knelt beside the boot prints in the mud jaw, clenched tight. Heavy, deep, not his, not Eli's. Someone had been close. Too close. He rose, rifle in hand, scanning the horizon. Just wind and birds. No dust trail. No sound of hooves. But he felt it like a chill that wouldn't burn off, even in sunlight. Tommy Rake was near. Inside, May sat by the hearth loading shells into the shotgun she'd cleaned the night before. Her hands moved without hesitation. She'd seen the night before. Knife in the door, the word carved with hatred. But she hadn't run. You sure you want to stay? Caleb asked. She didn't look up. There's no safety in running. I've seen what that man's capable of. I've seen worse. He believed her. Eli burst in breathless. Mr. Anders says there's men in town asking questions. Mean ones. About our ranch. Caleb stiffened. How many? 3 today? Maybe more yesterday. He looked at May. It's starting. She nodded. And it won't stop unless we stop it. That night, Caleb rode to town. The saloon's windows glowed like eyes in the dark, laughter spilling out in drunken waves. Inside, 3 men leaned against the bar. All strangers. One wore a flat-brimmed hat Caleb remembered well. It had been bent the same way the last time he'd seen it on Tommy Rake's head. They locked eyes. The room quieted. You Granger 1 asked, stepping forward. Caleb didn't blink. I am. Tommy wants a word. I'm listening. He wants to land. Says it's time. Caleb chuckled darkly. Tommy can go to hell. The man's smile vanished. You got a woman here now. That changes things. The room tensed. Caleb's voice dropped. You tell Tommy he sets 1 foot on my land. He won't get a warning shot. The man leaned close, whiskey breath, thick and sour. She don't belong here, Granger. We'll take her real. Quiet if you hand her over. Caleb headbutted him before the threat even finished leaving his mouth. The second man reached for his pistol, but Caleb already had his drawn. A gunshot cracked the ceiling, and the bartender screamed for them to take it outside. Caleb backed out, slow rifle steady fire in his gut, back at the ranch. May met him on the porch, candlelight flickering over her face. He tossed his saddlebag down and told her everything. Her face didn't change. He wants me, she said. He won't get you. We need help. Caleb nodded. I'll ride to my old company friends. We held the line together before. They'll ride again if I call. May shook her head. Too slow. We don't have days. We have hours. She was right. That night the town bell rang at midnight. May stood before a crowd of sleepy, hesitant townsfolk in the churchyard, her voice cutting through the dark like steel. You laughed when they left me at the train station, she began. You whispered about my age, my looks, my worth. Now listen close, because what's coming doesn't care about any of that. Men are riding in to take land-burn homes and kill anyone who gets in their way. Caleb Granger is standing between them and you. So am I. But we can't do it alone. A woman in the crowd scoffed. You think you can fight them? May raised a shotgun. I don't think. I know. Then she turned, walking up to a teenage boy with trembling hands. You ever fire a rifle? No, ma'am. Good, you'll learn. She moved fast, giving orders. She positioned lookouts on rooftops, handed out lanterns, directed hammering boards over windows. Caleb watched her, a strange ache blooming in his chest. She'd stepped into the role without asking, without apology. She wasn't a guest anymore. She was a line. Back at the ranch, Eli sat sharpening sticks with serious look. Can I help? May knelt beside him. You already are. You're why we fight. He blinked up at her. Are you scared? She hesitated, then touched his cheek. I've been scared so long I stopped noticing. But I'm not running. Not again. Thunder rolled over the hills. Not from clouds. Hose. Fast. Heavy. Caleb stepped outside, rifle in hand. A faint orange glow burned on the far ridge. They're lighting the dry grass, he growled. They're driving fire toward the ranch. May joined him, face pale but firm. They want to smoke us out. He looked at her. Then we hold the wind. The fire crept down the hills, slow and hissing. But the wind shifted, turned back on itself. The blaze veered east away from the ranch. May smiled grimly. Nature's on our side tonight. But it was only a taste. Hours later, gunshots cracked the air. The first rider came in fast, screaming, rifle raised. Caleb dropped him with a clean shot before the horse even slowed. Then more came. May fought like she'd trained for it, moving fast, eyes sharp, each shot calculated. She stood over Eli, over the porch, over the land that had taken her in, and refused to let her go. Caleb moved beside her, reloading, breathing hard. You were right about what you don't belong anywhere. You make places belong to you. She gave a quick, dry laugh. Then the front gate burst open. A tall figure rode through the smoke. Wide brim hat, long coat, black boots. Tommy Rake. He dismounted, slow, cruel grin wide. Well now, he drawled, ain't this quaint? May stepped forward, shotgun raised. Her hands didn't shake. Tommy's eyes narrowed. You gonna shoot me, darlin'? That don't seem polite considering all the effort I made come get you. Her voice didn't waver. You're not talking me. He shrugged. You came here on my coin. That makes you mine. You bought a lie, she said, and I'm not for sale. Behind her, Caleb raised his rifle. Tommy held up a hand. Now let's not be hasty. A single crack split the night. Tommy staggered back, blood blooming across his coat. Not from Caleb's rifle. May had fired first. He collapsed in the dirt, shock frozen on his face. The world went silent. May stood still, breath-heaving, eyes glassy. Caleb stepped beside her, hand brushing hers. It's over. She shook her head. Not yet. And from the hills, more hoofbeats began. May reloaded with trembling fingers, breath rising in sharp gasps. Blood soaked the front of her borrowed dress. Not her own, but Tommy Rake's. His body lay sprawled in the dirt, eyes open, slack-jawed. The man who haunted her nightmares was gone, yet the fear hadn't left her. From the dark ridges, more riders appeared. Shadows against moonlight, 6 or 7 at least. No time to count. Caleb cursed under his breath and ducked behind the porch railing, jerking his rifle toward the noise, but not backing down. Tommy was just ahead. Now we're fighting the tail. May looked down at Eli, who was huddled under a bench, clutching a slingshot like it could save them all. She dropped to one knee, touched his cheek. Stay down no matter what you hear. You hear me, baby? He nodded, swallowing hard, small lips, trembling. Caleb caught her gaze. You still sure you want to stay? She didn't blink. I'll die on this porch before I run again. The second wave came hard. Gunfire cracked across the night like thunder. Caleb dropped 2 men before they reached the barn. May took one clean through the shoulder. Another veered off, shrieking, a torch falling from his hand. Flames licked up the fence. May sprinted, grabbed a water barrel and kicked it loose. The flames hissed but didn't stop. The dry wind whipped them higher. They're circling for the house, Caleb shouted. She rushed back toward him, grabbing a spare rifle from the hallway. The kitchen window exploded inward. A man climbed through, rough beard, wild eyes. May didn't hesitate. She struck with the butt of her gun, caught him hard in the mouth. He staggered, snarled, raised a blade. Then Caleb's rifle cracked. The man crumpled dead before he hit the floor. May stared at the body, chest heaving. That makes 4. Caleb glanced at her. You keeping count? If I'm going to hell, I want the numbers straight. They heard shouts outside, panicked, disorganized. The gunmen weren't expecting resistance. Not from a widow, not from a woman they'd marked as too old. From behind the shed came hooves, fast pounding. May's heart skipped. Caleb raised his gun again, then paused. Wait, that's... A horn blew once. From a north trail, 6 riders appeared, weathered men, with rifles across their backs and dust in their coats. Veterans. Caleb's old unit. He'd written to them months ago, never expecting an answer. The lead rider tipped his hat. Heard you had varmints. Late as usual, Caleb muttered, relief flashing through his eyes. The newcomers rode in hard, flanking the house, scattering the last of Tommy's men like cattle. Gunfire became distant, then sporadic, then nothing. May lowered her weapon. Her arms ached. Her knees trembled. But she stayed standing. It was over. Caleb walked slowly toward her, lowering his rifle. "You all right?" She nodded. "I will be." They stood in the yard together, surrounded by smoke, silence, and bodies. Eli peeked out from beneath the porch, ran to May, and threw his arms around her waist. "You didn't leave." She held him close. Not ever. The sun hadn't risen yet, but a silver light crept over the horizon. The land was scorched in places, but still standing. Like them. Inside, they buried the dead in silence, those they'd killed, and those who'd come for blood. Caleb's friends helped patch the barn, reset the fencing, and shared what food they had before riding out again. They said little. Their work was a thank you. May sat on the porch steps afterward, sore and silent, a mug of black coffee cooling beside her. Caleb joined her elbows on his knees. "I never said thank you," he murmured. "For what? For staying, for Savan, Eli. For Savan, me." She didn't look at him. "You don't owe me anything. I know. That's what makes it mean more." The air was quiet now, the kind of quiet that follows storms. Uncertain, trembling, but full of breath. Caleb looked out at the land. I'd been dead inside a long time, since Mary passed. He brought fire back. May's eyes were distant. "I thought I was past my time, past Matt Aaron, past fighting for her." He reached over and took her hand, not gently, not desperately, but like he finally understood something he'd been afraid to face. "You're not past anything. You're right here. And I see you." Her fingers tightened around his. That night the house was warm. Eli fell asleep by the fire. Cradling a wooden horse Caleb had carved him when he was too small to speak. The smoke from the earlier fire still clung to the curtains, but it smelled more like memory than ruin. May stood by the window in her nightdress, watching the stars. Caleb joined her, touched her shoulder gently. "You ever think of leaving after all this?" She didn't turn. "Not anymore. You think you'd stay here with me?" She smiled soft. "You asking me to? I'm asking you not to leave. To help raise my son. To build something again. I don't know what that looks like, but I want it. With you." May finally turned. "You sure I'm still not young? Still got scars?" Caleb reached up, brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. "So do I. But you're the strongest woman I've ever known. And I think maybe you're exactly what this place was waiting for." She didn't answer with words. She kissed him, softly, like an ember flaring after lying hidden in ash. Outside, the prairie wind rolled low through the grass. Somewhere deep in the silence, something old let go. Grief, regret, loneliness. It scattered into the dust. Later, May would plant her first rose bush beside the porch. The first thing she ever claimed as her own. They said she was too old, too plain, too unwanted. But they didn't know what Caleb Granger knew. She was a bride worth fighting for, and she'd become the mother his son never had.